Okay, good morning. So what are we going to do today is just the end of the parsha is to look at the law, the final message of this parsha that Moshe gives to Bnei Israel. The Torah says, "Vayikram Moshe el kol Yisrael vayomer elahem." Moshe calls out to Bnei Israel and he says to them, "Atem reitem et kol asher asa Adonai le'eichem be'eretz Mitzrayim leFaro l'chol avadav v'chol artzo." Says, you saw what Hashem did le'einechem. Le'einechem means in front of your eyes. Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in Mitzrayim, leFaro l'chol avadav v'chol artzo, for Paro and for all his to all his servants and to all the land of Egypt. So the well, let's go a little bit and we'll come back. Masot hagadolot, and it describes what he did. These masot are wonders, are actions that Hashem does, that He does over a period of time. Masot hagadolot asher ra'u einecha, otot v'hamoftim, and then otot and moftim are these wonders that happen like boom, boom, 1, 2, 3. Hagadolim ahem, all these great things. And Hashem has not given you a leiv lada'at, a heart to know, ve'inayim lirot, and eyes to see, ve'oznayim lishma, and ears to hear, ad hayom hazeh, until this day. V'olechetchem 40 shana, and I took you for 40 years. V'midbar lo valusim salmotteichem aleichem, and your clothes never were problematic, and your shoes were always okay to wear. And then he carries on like that. Let's look at the first part. What is this? What is Moshe Rabbeinu trying to tell them? And when he speaks about the all these things that you saw, these wonders, and what Hashem did to Paro Mitzrayim, I mean, it's enough already. We know about these things. Moshe keeps emphasizing and emphasizing them. The Netziv says that the reason why Moshe is emphasizing them is because what he's trying to do is he's trying to say, we've just come out of reading 98 curses. I mean, they're terrible things, terrible curses that just explain that these curses were not most of the whole book of Dvarim is Moshe Rabbeinu speaking. So you'd think, is Moshe Rabbeinu giving the curses? And the answer to that is no, he's not giving the curses. He's merely saying them in his words as he was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But he's given these curses, and they're very intense and they're very difficult to stomach in a real way. And if that's the case, you can understand that Am Yisrael are actually at a bit of a bit shocked. They're a bit taken back. They're a little bit demotivated. So if they're demotivated, so therefore what the Torah comes to tell us, when Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, let's reframe, let's get back to where we were. Remember, yes, there are these curses, but don't worry too much, because at the end of the day, you saw what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did le'einechem, in front of your eyes, be'eretz Mitzrayim. And why is that so important? The Netziv says because what Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to bring them back is to remember what the destiny and what the purpose is of Am Yisrael. The destiny and the purpose of Am Yisrael is to bring the kavod of Hashem into this world. And since that is our role, to bring the kavod of Hashem into this world, it can't be that that these curses will be something that will be on us all the time. Chalila v'chas. We know we had Tisha B'Av a month ago. We know we go through the process where we do know that there have been difficult times for the Jewish people, but we mustn't think that that's going to be totally pervading over every single aspect of our lives all the time. Not at all. Remember, we are the ones, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, and He did these Masot HaGadolot. Masot HaGadolot, He explains, as I said earlier, are step-by-step process of wonders. And the purpose there is to create an understanding, a slowly understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. And therefore, when we understand that, then we understand the real hashkocha on ourselves as well. And once we can come to terms with that, so then we are able to move forward in our lives with confidence that we're not going to be destroyed, as it seems to be what these curses were saying that we would be. But then it says, "V'lo natan Hashem lachem leiv ladat." Hashem has not given you a leiv ladat, a heart to know, and eyes to see, and oznayim lishma, and ears to hear. So what is this all about? So we know that Bnei Israel traveled for 40 years in the desert. What did they do during that period of time while they were traveling in the desert. So they learned, they sat and they learned, and they were taught Torah by the elders, by Moshe, and they lived their lives. They were children, and they had to play with their children. They did all these things that normal people do for 40 years, except it's in a very protected and enclosed environment and a very holy environment, because there was no negative influences whatsoever. So comes along the Rabbeinu Bachaya, and the Rabbeinu Bachaya says, we've got an idea, right? We've got this idea that at the age of 40, it's a thing now, at the age of 40, you can start learning Kabbalah, and you can start learning all these things. Where do we get it from? He says, Mikan Darshu Razal, from here, Chazal teach us, that you can't get to the depth of your teacher's teachings of the greats until you've learned with them for 40 years. And that's why it says, Ben Arba'im Shana Labina, that you get bina, you get real understanding at 40 years. Where do we learn that from? From this pasuk. Because at this pasuk, Hashem says, what does it mean that Hashem didn't give us a heart to know, and eyes to see, and ears to hear? It means that whilst we were still traveling in the desert, we didn't have the absolute clarity that we needed in order to fully understand the what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted from us as a people. And obviously it means that as on an individual level, that we need to take us some time to understand what Hashem wants for us as individuals over this period of time. And the way the Malbim expresses it, he says, that a person achieves chokhmah, wisdom, over three al shlosha panim, in three ways, in three facets. The first thing is a person has to arouse within themselves that they want to get wisdom. There has to be a desire to have that wisdom. The second one is it says the one thing is that you may desire the wisdom. The other thing is that you have to have a desire that when you see things that you don't really understand, or things that are not really that you're really familiar with, you have to have a desire to want to understand what they are. And the last thing is, how do you learn? Where do we get this learning from? Says the Malbim. You'll never understand on your own, because if it's something that you don't understand, you can't understand it on your own. And only you'll get it from a Kabbalah, from a tradition that we get from our forefathers. So therefore, says the Malbim, that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was teaching Bnei Israel over this 40-year period is that in order to acquire chokhmah, in order to acquire wisdom, to become something great, there are three facets that you need. The first one is a desire to learn. The second one is a desire, an ability to see when you're lacking something, when you're lacking information. So you see something you don't really know about, and then the desire to understand what it is. And finally, to know and to have the humility that when you need to get information, where's that going to come from? From ears that will hear. Things that the ability and the desire to hear from others and to learn from others, because that's the only way we can really work. And he says, Ad hayom hazeh, until this day, that there was a day in which, after the 40-year period, that they really got everything together. And at that point in time, says the Malbim, that on this day, hayom kablu aleim avodat Hashem me'ahava. That it was on this day, as they're about to go into Eretz Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu is completing his things, that they completely accepted HaKadosh Baruch Hu from this point of ahava, of deep, intense love. And when they can have this point of deep, intense love, then everything can start coming together. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, "V'olechetchem 40 shana," took you for 40 years through the desert. Lo balu sam l'teichem me'aleichem lo nalcha ba'atzam me'al raglecha. But remember that it's not only about a spiritual desire. One also has to have their physical needs taken care of. And where were those physical needs taken care of? Understand those were taken care of also by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He doesn't only look after us physically. It's not only a sorry, not only spiritually, it's not only a spiritual attachment we have to have, we also have to rely on him for our physical needs. Lechem lo achaltim, you didn't eat bread, but yain v'sheicha lo shatitem, and you didn't drink wine or any type of alcohol. Laman teitu, in order that you would know, ki ani Adonai Elohechem, in order that you would know that I am Hashem your God. So what does this mean? What is this lechem lo achaltem? And yain v'sheicha lo shatitem, that you didn't eat. So the Mefarshim said it's not like they didn't have bread in the desert. It's not like they didn't have wine. We don't really know exactly what they didn't have. But what he's saying is that these things, the physicality in the world, whilst they were working for these 40 years of trying to build their relationship to reach that point of Avat Hashem, those things were things that they didn't need, they didn't want, they didn't desire them. As the Malbim explains, he says, I took you into the midbar for this one single reason. The midbar has got nothing in it. It's empty, it's open, it's got no physical things which will somehow disturb a person's spiritual growth. That you shouldn't deal with the material thing. Don't eat in an excess way, and don't drink wine and don't drink any type of alcohol. Because those are the things that stop us from achieving shleimut, our completion. I gave you spiritual bread. That's the man. They didn't know what it was. How could a person live on this food? This is spiritual food. He ain't bogeshem because it had no physicality in it. It came from the word of Hashem. They drank, what the main thing they drank was from the water that came from the rock. That's also something very different. And so therefore, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to them, and how important that is for us at this time, is that what are the things that we have to look at that are taking us away from our true spiritual journeys. It's never easy, this, because we live physical lives, and we have to run after work, and we've got to make sure that we have what we need and make sure that everybody's satisfied. The question is that when we're trying to achieve a level of spirituality, what are the impediments in our way? And those impediments in our way must certainly not be the way we see our Kodesh Baruch. We have to recognize that everything comes from him, number one. And number two, we have to recognize that the physical things that we have need to be taken to a spiritual space, not be used physically, but be used to feed our spiritual pursuits as well. Have a beautiful Shabbos, everybody. I wish everybody a warm Shabbos. It's going to be cold, but please God, you should just know only good things and simchas, and there will be Bezrat Hashem slichot at midnight. We'll put out the notice a little bit later.